Romance of the Three Kingdoms Chapter 8. Imperial official Wang Yun plots with his serving girl to destroy Dong Zhuo and Lu Bu. The plot succeeds, and the two men dramatically fall out. The advisor says, Sun Jian is gone, and his son's voices haven't even broken, so their lands lie open to us if we attack now. Make peace and you will only encourage them to grow stronger and become a major danger to us. But Lu Biao will not sacrifice his friend Huang Zhu. And so the coffin is sent, and the life of the envoy spared. The body of Sun Jian, already placed in a fine coffin by Lu Biao, is sent into the care of his son, who in turn releases Huang Zhu. Sun Tzu returns to his home city to bury his father, and soon the fame of his wise judgment and humility spreads. This brings many a talented person to his court. Needless to say, Dong Zhuo, way off in Chang'an, is delighted to hear of the death of Sun Jian. When he is told that Sun Tzu is only 17 years old, he feels he has nothing more to fear from that quarter. This encourages him to become even more outrageous in his behavior. He insists on being called the most venerable father and acts as if he is indeed the emperor. Some way outside Chang'an he has a vast palace created, forcing over 250,000 serfs to labor on it. Once finished, he fills it with 800 of the most beautiful women to be his personal attendants. The palace is stuffed full of plunder, gold, jade and many other treasures. His terrible abuse of power knows no limits. On one occasion, during a feast, he has a large number of rebels who have surrendered brought in. While the guests eat, he has the arms and legs of the rebels hacked off, their eyes gouged out, tongues cut out and even has some boiled alive. The terrified screams shake the guests to the core, but Dong Zhuo eats on as if nothing untoward is happening. At another feast he has one of the top officials who is attending the feast arrested for conspiracy. Seized, he is taken away to be killed, and his head is brought back in on a platter and placed in front of all the officials. Returning from this particular dreadful event, the minister Wang Yun is in despair. It is the late evening, and he wanders into his garden, hoping to find there some peace and so to restore his spirits. He raises his eyes to heaven and weeps. Then suddenly he hears a sound nearby. It is a deep, heartfelt sigh of distress. Approaching, he finds it is a young woman called Diao Chan who has grown up as a singing girl in his house. She is both beautiful and bright and he considers her almost as a daughter. "What have you done wrong, young lady?" he asks. "I would never do anything wrong," Diao Chan replies, startled to see him. "So why are you so distressed?" Wang Yun asks. "Let me tell you the truth from the very bottom of my heart," she replies. "You've looked after me and had me tutored in the arts of music and dancing and have always been generous to me. Nothing I can do could ever repay you. But I've noticed recently that you seem unhappy, I can see it in your face. Yet who am I to ask you what's troubling you? Then tonight I saw you in the garden and this made me sigh. Never for a moment thinking you'd hear me. If there is anything I can do to help, I would be prepared to embrace death itself over and over again." Wang Yun is speechless for a moment and then says, "The whole Han dynasty is about to be destroyed. But, I really think you could be the one to save it. Come." And the bewildered young woman follows him to his own chambers. Dismissing the other servants, he sits her down on a chair and then prostrates himself before her. "What are you doing, my lord?" Diao Chan cries, and in return she prostrates herself before him, asking, "What is going on?" In tears, Wang Yun asks, "Can you have pity on the people of our land and for the Han dynasty?" "I am willing to undergo any number of deaths if I can be of service," she replies. "Listen, the truth is," says Wang Yun still kneeling on the ground before her, "that the people are in grave danger but you could be the one who will save us all. It's now crystal clear that Dong Zhuo plans to usurp the throne, and there's no one who can stand up to him. Dong Zhuo has an adopted son, Lu Bu, a great warrior, and, like his father, he loves beautiful women. My plan is to set a trap for them both by promising you in marriage to Lu Bu. Once he is caught in this engagement, then I'll offer you to Dong Zhuo as well. This will mean you can set them against each other. If you can incite Lu Bu to kill Dong Zhuo you can end this terrible evil, and then the sacred order of our land will be restored. I'm sure you can do this." But it is very dangerous. Are you willing? Giao Chan replies immediately, I'm willing to die 10,000 deaths. Just say the word, and I will be ready to go and meet them. Then just leave it to me. Nothing of this must leak out, says Wang Yun, lowering his voice, or we'll all be killed. Have no fear, Giao Chan reassures him. Not even 1,000 knives could prize this secret from me. Thank you, thank you, thank you, says Wang Yun. So the next day Wang Yun gathers together gold and wonderful pearls from his family heirlooms and commissions a skilled craftsman to create a magnificent crown. When this is finished he has it delivered to Lu Bu, who is so delighted he comes to thank Wang Yun personally. When he arrives at Wang Yun's house it is Wang Yun himself who meets him at the doorway and escorts him inside. Laid out on the table are bowls of expensive delicacies. Lu Bu is overwhelmed and says so. I'm but a simple person within the Prime Minister's team, but you are a great minister. I really don't think I'm worthy of such kindness. My lord, throughout the land there is no one today who is your equal in courage, Wang Yun says. So I'm offering my respect not to the office you hold but to your heroic fame. This fills Lu Bu with joy. And Wang Yun continues to laud him, drinking to his health and heaping praise on the virtue of both Dong Zhuo and Lu Bu, while Lu Bu drinks heavily and roars with delight. Wang Yun dismisses most of the servants, just keeping those who are plying his guest with alcohol. Soon Lu Bu is seriously drunk, and at this point Wang Yun orders the servants to fetch my daughter. So Giao Chan is brought in. She is dressed to kill, so elegantly and so alluringly. Lu Bu is astonished. He seems to sober up immediately. Who is this? He asks in wonder. She is my little daughter, Giao Chan, Wang Yun replies. I hope that in the light of how touchingly friendly you've been to me, you might like to meet her. So saying, he orders Giao Chan to offer Lu Bu a cup of wine, and as she does so, she makes sure she catches his eye. She makes it clear to him that she finds him very attractive. From that moment on Lu Bu's eyes never leave Giao Chan, and she is commanded to sit beside him. Yet more wine is drunk. It is then that Wang Yun suddenly says, if I were to offer her to you as your concubine, would you be willing to accept? Lu Bu is stunned. Of course. Of course I would love this. I would be bound to you forever. Trust me, I would be as loyal as a horse. Or a dog. To this outpouring, Wang Yun replies. Then we will find an auspicious day and she will be sent to the palace. Lu Bu is over the moon and cannot tear his eyes away from her, while she reciprocates with amorous glances. Eventually he leaves but only after thanking his host over and over again. A few days later, and after making sure Lu Bu is nowhere to be seen, Wang Yun kowtows before Dong Zhuo and invites him to dine at my humble home. Dong Zhuo graciously accepts. An array of delicacies is again prepared and set out in the main hall. No expense has been spared to make the scene as luxurious as possible. At midday Dong Zhuo arrives and is met by his host dressed in his best finery. Dong Zhuo enters with a swarm of armed guards and takes the seat of honor. He beckons Wang Yun to come and sit beside him. Wang effusively expresses his gratitude. Your Excellency, your virtue towers above all others, greater by far than Yi or even the Duke of Zhou. 5 Needless to say this pleases Dong Zhuo greatly, and while the wine is served and the music begins to play, Wang Yun continues to praise his guest in the most fulsome terms. As dusk draws on, and the wine begins to work its magic, Wang Yun invites his guest into the private quarters of the house. The guards are dismissed, and Wang Yun offers his guest another cup of wine. Ever since my youth I've studied astrology, he confides. So I could not help but notice that heaven is telling us that the days of the House of Han are numbered because of the outstanding reputation for virtue you have throughout the world. It is as if we were in the time of the Emperor Shun, when he made way for his virtuous Prime Minister Yu, and both heaven's and humanity's wishes were fulfilled. Dong Zhuo is taken aback by this prediction that he might become emperor and professes his astonishment. Wang Yun continues. Since the beginning of time, those who follow the way have succeeded those who have lost the way. Those who have lost their virtue have been succeeded by those who are guided by virtue. In my experience this is a truth beyond doubt. Well, Dong Zhuo exclaims. If this is indeed what heaven wants, to bestow upon me the mandate of heaven to rule the land, then, Wang Yun, you will be acclaimed as having been the first to discern it. At this point Wang Yun moves to the next stage of his plan for the evening. No ordinary musicians are good enough for such a worthy guest as you, my lord, he says. This is why I've chosen the most outstanding performer in my entire household. And with this Giao Chan appears and she begins her dance. Poets ever since that time have sought to describe her beauty. They have compared her to a swallow in her gracefulness and her movements to the most exquisite perfume from a flower. As planned, Dong Zhuo is completely enamored of the dancer. Who is she? He asks. She's our singing girl and she's called Giao Chan, Wang Yun replies. On hearing she can sing, Dong Zhuo is even more fascinated, and then, accompanied by the percussion of castanets, she sings. A poet has described the song of Giao Chan to Dong Zhuo. You, seemingly so delicate with your bright cherry lips. Finest pearl teeth and breath like a perfumed passion. Ah, but your tongue's hidden like a sword. And it's this that will prove deadly to this worthless lord. Overcome, Dong Zhuo asks how old she is. 16, is the answer. She's like an immortal spirit come to grace the earth, he says. This is the moment Wang Yun has been waiting for and, getting to his feet, he says. If you will not be offended, I would like to offer you this young girl. And naturally Dong Zhuo is more than happy to accept. Straight away a coach is summoned, and Giao Chan is sent on ahead to the Prime Minister's home. Dong Zhuo and Wang Yun travel there together so Wang Yun can say his farewells once his guest has reached home. Later, as he is returning home, Wang Yun suddenly finds the roadway blocked. In front of him are two lines of red lanterns, and there stands Lu Bu, armed to the teeth. He seizes Wang Yun roughly. You promised Giao Chan to me, he snarls. Now you've given her to the Prime Minister. What kind of game are you playing? We cannot discuss this here, Wang Yun replies hurriedly. Come back with me to my home. When they are ensconced in Wang Yun's private quarters, Wang Yun says, Why do you say this about me, General? I was told, replies Lu Bu, that you had Giao Chan sent to the Prime Minister's house in a special coach. Why? What's going on? You've no idea what has been going on. Wang Yun exclaims as if with astonishment and weariness. Yesterday, the Prime Minister told me he wanted to come and see me to discuss something confidential. When he came he said, I have heard of this beautiful young woman called Giao Chan whom you've given to my son. I wanted to come and see her for myself and to find out if this is true. I could hardly refuse now, could I? Says Wang Yun. So I had her come and offer due respect. Then to my surprise he said he would take her back to the palace and present her to you. As you can well imagine, I had no option but to agree. Tomorrow I'll send her bags to your palace. Lu Bu falls for this. It is I who should apologize to you for having misunderstood the situation, he says. And so Lu Bu goes off, but not before he has apologized and offered his thanks time and time again. However, when Lu Bu calls the next day at Dong Zhuo's palace, he is told by the maids that the master came home last night with a new woman, and they have not yet risen from their bed. Lu Bu's heart is clogged with anger, and he creeps round to peer in through the bedroom window. Giao Chan is combing her hair when she spots him. Immediately she feigns an expression of terrible distress and sadness, dabbing at her eyes over and over as if she is crying. Lu Bu watches for quite some time and then strides into the main hall of the palace to offer his morning greeting to Dong Zhuo. Is everything all right? Dong Zhuo asks, concerned by his adopted son's expression. Of course. Everything is fine, Lu Bu curtly replies. But he then notices the figure of a young woman moving around behind the curtain and glimpses Giao Chan peering out and looking passionately at him. Lu Bu cannot hide his emotion, and Dong Zhuo guesses why he is distracted and dismisses him abruptly. Over the next month, Dong Zhuo becomes entirely besotted with Giao Chan, so much so that he ignores his official work. When he falls ill, Giao Chan sits beside him night and day to minister to him. One day when Lu Bu comes in to see how he is, he finds Dong Zhuo asleep and Diao Chan, spotting him, silently makes it clear that she is in distress and has eyes only for him. Lu Bu is deeply moved, and at just that moment Dong Zhuo awakes and sees that Lu Bu is staring fixedly at a spot behind the bed. Turning round quickly, he sees Diao Chan standing there. "Are you trying to seduce my lover?" he cries, and he has Lu Bu thrown out. Now Lu Bu is really enraged. On his way home he runs into advisor Li Ru and tells him what has happened. Immediately Li Ru rushes off to see Dong Zhuo and pleads with him to make amends with Lu Bu. "Otherwise such a split will spell disaster for us all," he says. "So what do you recommend?" asks Dong Zhuo. "I suggest you call him back tomorrow and shower him with expensive gifts and sing his praises." The next day Dong Zhuo summons Lu Bu, apologizes and plies him with presents. However, although Lu Bu thanks him, from that day on, while his body might be at the service of Dong Zhuo, his heart is with Diao Chan. One day, Lu Bu, clad in his armor and on guard duty, notices that Dong Zhuo is having an audience with the emperor. And so he takes the opportunity to slip out and ride off to the prime minister's palace. Tying his horse to the front hitching post and carrying his halberd, he makes his way to Diao Chan's apartment. "Leave straight away," she whispers urgently. "But go to the Phoenix Garden, where I will meet you." Faithfully he goes there. He rests his halberd against one of the pillars in the garden and awaits his lover. He waits for a long time but eventually is rewarded by seeing her coming towards him. Moving gracefully through the willows and flowers, she truly looks like an immortal descending from the palace of the moon. With tears in her eyes, she comes to him beside the pool and says, "Even though I'm not his natural daughter, Minister Wang Yun has always treated me as if I were. So when he gave me to you it was as if all my dreams had come true. Can you imagine my horror at the way in which the Prime Minister just came and seized me? Now I am in despair. I am in torment. I just want to kill myself. I'm only holding on so that there might come a moment when I could say goodbye to you. Now I have seen you, I know I'm no longer worthy to be with such a hero as you. So I'll die in front of you to show you how much I honor you and how little I'm worthy of you." And saying this, she makes as if to jump into the pool and drown herself. Lu Bu leaps forward and sweeps her up into his arms. Tears are pouring down his face as he holds her tight against him. "I knew it was me you really loved," he sobs. "But we've never been able to talk." Clasping Lu Bu to her, she whispers, "If it's not possible to be your wife in this life, I shall meet you again in the next." "If I cannot marry you in this life, then what kind of a hero am I?" he answers. "Please rescue me," groans Diao Chan. Lu Bu suddenly realizes he might be missed by Dong Zhuo at any moment and is alarmed. Diao Chan clings even more tightly to him. "If you're so afraid of that old villain, then I'll never see another day rise." All is lost, she sobs as if in despair. Lu Bu is bewildered and asks her to give him a moment to think this through. "In the women's quarter they were talking about how you were the greatest hero," she says. "I could never have imagined that you would be one to be ruled by a lesser man than you." Now she weeps openly. Lu Bu, moved beyond reason, sweeps her again into his arms, speaking words of comfort as they cling together, swaying with emotion, she unable to speak further. Back at the palace, Dong Zhuo has noticed that Lu Bu is absent. And so, quickly taking his leave of the emperor, he sets off home. When he arrives he sees Lu Bu's horse tied up outside and upon questioning the servants hears that his adopted son is inside. Unable to find him, he calls out for Diao Chan. "She's in the Phoenix Garden," a maid tells him. Rushing into the garden, Dong Zhuo sees to his horror the two of them locked in an embrace together. He lets out a terrifying roar. Lu Bu spins round when he hears the noise and, seeing it is Dong Zhuo, runs. Dong Zhuo spots the halberd in a corner and hurls it after him. Lu Bu dodges the weapon and keeps running. Dong Zhuo tries to race after him but he is too fat and slow, and Lu Bu is long gone by the time Dong Zhuo charges out of the garden gate and collides with someone who is running into the garden the opposite way. Who on earth can this be? All will be revealed.